now I would like to um, move into our conversation with faculty responders. But before I do that, I wanted to pause for a moment and name what we've just experienced together. Across these panels, what strikes me is not simply the range of topics, though that range has been remarkable, but a shared orientation, a way of doing theology that feels deeply grounded in lived experience, embodied knowledge, and a refusal to separate academic work from real world consequences. So we've heard work that pushes boundaries, engaging sexuality and theology in ways that are intentionally provocative, work that interrogates revisionism and the rewriting of histories, work that reflects on walls, both literal and metaphorical, as spaces of division, but also possibility, a work that reimagines Christology, ethics, and public life through African, womanist, and decolonial lenses. And as I've been listening to you all, I've been struck by a consistent movement across all of this work, a movement from the margin to the center, from object to subject, and from theory to lived embodied practice. So there's also, I think, a shared courage that we hold together, a theological imagination that is not afraid to disrupt, whether that means challenging dominant ways of knowing, reworking inherited doctrines, or even stretching the conventions of what academic writing is supposed to look like. And in many ways, what we are seeing here is not only the development of ideas, but the formation of ethos, not simply what our students argue, but how they position themselves as credible, accountable voices in relation to the communities that they address. So their authority is not being claimed abstractly, but it is emerging through lived experience, risk taking, and a willingness to be implicated in the very realities that they are naming. And I want to name that because that kind of work is not easy. It requires risk, it requires vulnerability, and it requires a certain kind of intellectual and theological trust. So this time is not simply about summarizing what we've heard so far. Instead, I want to invite our beloved faculty responders into a different set of questions. What do we see happening here in terms of formation, and what kind of theological voices are beginning to shape among our students? And what might it mean to recognize them not only as learners, but as emerging scholars and public theologians already doing meaningful work in the world? So, with that, I'd like to invite our faculty responders into a conversation together. And so, why don't we start with beginning with what you've noticed across panels? What theological or ethical thread surprised you in how consistently it appeared across these very different papers? Dr. Huang?
Oh, yeah, happened to unmute myself first. So, thank you so much, all presenters today. And just, to make it sure, one of the strongest threads I noticed across these panels is that this is not simply a conversation about inclusion in a broader or general sense. What is really at stake is a deeper question about how reality itself is interpreted and who has the authority to define, what counts as truth, what counts as experience and theology. And across these papers, we see a consistent awareness that theology is not neutral. And I love this term. Theology is not neutral. And it is shaped by history, by power, and by the frameworks through which we read both texts and lives. So there is a shared concern with how identity has been named and how stories have been told and how certain interpretations have become more dominant while others have been marginalized or silenced. So naming all this into our theological conversation was really striking. And so what emerges here is not just a call for inclusion, but a call for re-examining the foundations or theological authority itself. So I think it really invites the deeper ethical and theological thread connecting this work. So thank you so much for all your work.
Thank you, Dr. Huang. I also am curious to hear whether any of Doctors Joshua and Dr. Corwin, whether you saw any unexpected resonance across methods or traditions, or did you see any tensions that you thought could be productive for us to sit with? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I thank you again, Dr. So, for your facilitation today and for all the presenters and my faculty colleagues. I'm still struck actually from Jana's question around kind of the structure of our work, the structure of our writing and our thinking. And I think this was picked up, at least in my hearing, in Raquel's paper. I appreciated how Dr. Huang lifted up that it was the method itself, the liturgy itself, that is the project. So one of the threads that I find I'm resonating with, and this was a little bit in Minister Bobby's too, but this critical interrogation of our methodologies and of our sources. I think epistemologies and kind of epistemic authority is one question, but then there's a whole other question of how do we communicate or translate what we think is happening. And Fanon in one of his books uses this phrase called colonial constellations. So it's that, the colonizing logics affect each of these parts of our work. So I've been paying attention today to form and how that form shapes or malforms the content.
Thank you, Dr. Corwin. Definitely, a lot of the things that you have mentioned, we're trying to also piece all these together. And I'm also reminded by what you said that we want to think theologically with the publics and thinking broadly about all of these together about the academic as gentle, angry people. So I really loved your music as well. So thank you for that. I want us to shift toward the question of formation now. What do you think these papers reveal about how students here are being formed as theologians? So, for example, what kind of theological ethos is emerging? And what risks are students taking that you find significant? And I know that some of you already kind of mentioned that, and we've been noticing that through these outstanding papers. Where do you see intellectual and methodological maturity in these papers?
I can jump on that one.
Yeah.
Particularly as the accreditation liaison officer, this is something I pay attention to. It helps track the impact of the curriculum here at PSR. And what I've heard consistently this symposium is a desire to problematize really the function and also the purpose of theological discourse. What is it for? Why are we having conversation? Why are we talking about God? And then placing the emphasis of its purpose in the context of community. Um, how are we attending to the interests and needs of particular communities through the conversations we have, as seminarians and the things that we do as religious leaders? Um, to me, that says that there's a heavy emphasis on, um, we've heard the terminology of decoloniality, of decolonial formation, but also I'm hearing some dabbling as well into the context of post-colonialism and some anti-colonialism. Um, so for me, that's really exciting, right? Not just because all my research really, centers a lot of those theories, but it's an opportunity to stretch the boundaries and even sort of conventional ways that we have talked about theology and produced knowledge that essentially becomes theological discourse, shaping churches and the way people act and exist in the world. So I think that we are right there, sort of pushing the envelope in really, really relevant and transformative ways.
Mhm. Thank you, Dr. Bartholomew. Dr. Corwin, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo Dr. Bartholomew's connection to these papers in community. I thought that was something particularly I saw in the second panel with MacArthur and John and Raquel. Is, they're really talking contextually specifically, which is in some regard, the hope of a DMin project and hope of DMin research is that it's rooted within a context, right? That there's a really deeply integrated work. But I think to Dr. Bartholomew's point, the papers across all three panels, I think, show that that's a formation of the student in the classroom, is that we're thinking about who are we. This goes back even to one of Lavjay's questions, right? Who's responsible? Where are the systems of accountability here that shape narrative and then shape our engagements with the public?
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Absolutely. We are really engaged in community, and that is how we are shaped. It was interesting to see how everything, like we're seeing everything from erotic theological method to decolonial ethics to public health theology. So this wide range is very interesting to see and to see the formation and transformation of our students. So thank you both for noting that. So,
Yeah, and
oh yes, Dr. Huang.
I just wanted to jump in this chain of thoughts and chain of, great conversation. So, so I also, as I mentioned before, one of the most noticeable, features, among many, and across these panels is the willingness to take methodological risks. So, there is a movement beyond the traditional boundaries between disciplines, between forms of expression, and between what is typically considered academic and what is considered lived or embodied. And as a practical theologian, this kind of, meeting with, different horizons is really, fascinating. And I could, witness today that, our students at PSR is really unafraid to take those risks. So, which is great. So in some cases, this involves, bringing together forms of, knowledge that are often kept separate, such as the intellectual and the experiential, and the analytical and the creative. And that kind of work is not without risk. Again, we gotta take a risk. We gotta be more, courageous and unafraid, right? It requires stepping outside of familiar frameworks and trusting that the new forms of expression can still carry rigor and academic rigor and depth. So, but I will say that, it is precisely in these moments that theology becomes more responsive here and more expensive and more attentive to the fullness of human experience. So I really appreciate all these papers and presenters and also, our, beloved faculty members taking all those risks together.
Thank you, Dr. Huang. Yes, faculty and our leadership do an incredible amount of work to build the curriculum and also make sure that we, stick to our standards and also our there are many moving pieces. So I'm glad to see that it's being, the fruits of our students are appearing in these symposiums. I'm grateful to see that. I think it's good to segue to the next question. Because we've been talking about like our, one of our themes in the symposium is public responsibility. What do you think it means to name these students as public theologians, even at this stage? So where do you see their work already intervening in public life? And what kind of responsibilities come with this kind of scholarship?
I'll just start by saying that
Yeah,
I
thank you.
think one of the immense strengths of the papers we've explored today has been the writers, the students' willingness and emphasis, really, to connect their work with their social locations. I think that helps to orient them in a public setting in ways that are generative, but also relevant and effective. We can't be all things to all people. So it's really important that we have some type of foundations, home base, upon which we can create a platform and build a message that can be relevant and intelligible to society at large. But really naming who you are and the community to which you are accountable as a starting point is something that I have, witnessed today. And it's an effective skill, right? Not just as a thinker, but as a religious leader, that I think would be sort of the first step in becoming an effective public theologian.
Absolutely. Thank you. That would be the first step indeed, because we want to be responsibly be able to engage forms of theology, and also things. Think about how intentionally what can it disrupt academic norms. We want to be able to engage responsibly on that, and also like because of the amount of anger and grief and desire that we see in modern society, the role of theological ethics is becoming more important today. Um, has anyone thought about like where do you see hope emerging across these papers? I know that some of you already kind of mentioned that you might see something like that there, but if you have any thoughts, please share.
I'll start by, I didn't want to go first because I'm nervous about the word hope. It's not one of my favorite words. Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, just a different conversation. But I think that I do see, I'm interested even in kind of even Dr. Bartholomew's previous response around the responsibility we have to publics. And it's making me think also of some critical theory around counterpublics. And what we see in all of this is that so much of the work that we think of as being public requires that there's some community that affirms that language, right? That affirms that voice. And so what I see as generative across these papers is that it's a difference to me between the preacher on the corner yelling at, in a microphone that nobody's listening to versus the people who are connected through grassroots, through organizing, through other movements that are really building up a coalition. And I think what I see in these papers is a generativity around that coalition building, around that camaraderie and solidarity that means what is being shared has the potential to move into the yet unknowns.
Mhm. Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Davis. Dr. Huang, did you want to add anything last?
Oh, well, Dr. Davis, described that so well, but, I also need to name it that, I'm a big fan of hope. So I will name it there. But I mean, I'm not saying that this is an easy kind of hope, and it does not come from a resolution or from having everything clearly settled, right? But this is more like, my stubborn choice that no matter what happens, no matter what's going on, nevertheless, I will still decide to be hopeful. So that's my choice. Yeah, so what we see is, I feel like, deep engagement with this complexity, even with our vulnerability, and awareness of tension and of unresolved questions and of ongoing challenges. It's- but still, hope is present, I feel like. This meeting itself, this symposium itself, represents hope in our community. And yeah, because of hope in this context, it's not about certainty, but it is about orientation and reorientation. It's about choosing to continue asking questions and to continue listening more carefully, and to continue imagining that things can be otherwise. So, and what gives me hope is that our students, again, are already doing this work. And for me, this is where hope lives.
Thank you, Dr. Huang. Yes, and Dr. Ish said we'd love to see a hope debate between the two of you, Dr. Davis and Dr. Huang, someday. But thank you. This has been such a rich conversation.
Can
I
I
can,
add something real quick, Dr. So? Is there a
yes,
little bit of
sure,
time?
Dr.
I just
Bartholomew.
wanted to say
Go
something about
ahead.
hope
Yes.
because, it's one of these sort of theological terms that we're stuck with. Um, and I asked myself, were you talking about Christian hope or just hope in general? I know Christian hope is attached to certain doctrinal commitments that some of us have. So it's sort of here to stay. And perhaps we can't throw away the baby with the bathwater. But I think that there's power in hopelessness sometimes, to Dr. Davis's point. I do see Dr. Huang's sort of commitments as well, as somebody who is trained in the Christian tradition. Um, but ultimately, what to answer the question, what I see as any semblance of hope from these papers, it relates to what Dr. Davis is saying about these sort of counter publics. These present sort of counter narratives to dominant ways of thinking about the work that we do, not just in seminary, but the work that we do in the public square related to social justice. And my hope is that more people are able to get access to these types of conversations so that, we're not just all in here talking to ourselves, but society at large can see the brilliance and the formation of religious leaders as something more than just relegated to the context of church or sort of stereotypical settings where we would think religious leaders do this sort of work. But this is relevant for everybody, right? And that is my hope, that these present these types of counter narratives for folks to see different ways of thinking and doing the work of religion, of spirituality, but also community.
Thank you, Dr. Bartholomew. And I see that we have a wonderful chat as well. Dr. Corwin said, hope on, not opposing to hope. And also President David talked about our emeritus who said, hope is an action. Also hope is doing. So we'll leave it there, conclude there. I think it was a very rich conversation. I would wish to continue, but I like to think that one of the shifts that this moment invites us to think is to recognize that our students are already becoming public theologians. And if what we have seen today is the formation of theological ethos, voices that are emerging with credibility, accountability, then the question before us is, how will we respond? How will we support and challenge and accompany this work with the seriousness it deserves? Thank you for all being part of this shared space of conversation, and thank you to our faculty responders as well. Thank you. Right, so before we close, I want to take a moment to offer my deep gratitude to the many people who made this symposium possible. First, special thanks to Dean Susan Abraham, who has supported us with from the beginning to the end, and also Laura Ryan, who, with all of the nitty-gritty things in the back scene, Laura supported us in the back as well, making things possible. Much of the labor that is seen and unseen made today possible, and thanks to Matthew, who is also in the room, to support us with technology. Brianna Treasure Quibelin, Jacob Perez, Reverend Ann Jefferson, Hayden Reynolds Cohen, Michelle Estrelado, Joseph Jinsei, Alex Roman, and Marco Gonzalez. Thank you for supporting us with the communications, publicity, reaching out to alumni, facilities, and all of that. This symposium did not just simply happen. It was very carefully, thoughtfully, and collaboratively built. From logistics to communication, from technology to hospitality, all of your work has created the conditions for this kind of space to exist, and we are deeply grateful. I also want to extend heartfelt thanks to our student panelists, Jaina Costa, Lav J. Butani, Reverend Rachel Pryor, Raquel Farmer Richardson, Reverend MacArthur H. Flournoy IV, John Wright, Richard Martin, Jane Parks, and Reverend Bobby Wiseman Jr. What we have witnessed today is not only academic excellence, but courage. Each of you brought your voice, your questions, your commitments, and your communities into this space. You have trusted us with your work, and in doing so, you have challenged us, taught us, and reminded us why theological education matters. We are especially grateful for the ways you have engaged difficult questions with clarity, vulnerability, and rigor. And you are shaping the future of theology, not someday, but now. I also want to thank our faculty, Dr. Corwin Malcolm Davis, Dr. Hisang Huang, Dr. Joshua Bartholomew, Dr. Ish Ruiz, President David Vásquez-Levy, and all of our faculty who are present with us today, especially our faculty responders, the 3 responders, and also Dr. Ish Ruiz, who helped with supporting students who needed support with writing. Your role in this symposium is not only to respond, but to accompany, to model what it means to take student work seriously as scholarship, to engage it with care. And so thank you for your thoughtful responses, your presence, and your commitment to the formation of our students. And finally, to everyone who has joined us today, whether as participants, supporters, or community members, thank you for being part of this shared space. Your presence matters, and this is what transforms this from series of presentations into a living, breathing academic community. This symposium was a collective effort, and it was possible when it was a collective effort, when we all came together to engage responsibility. So thank you all, and having witnessed the depth of the work today, we now turn to voices of institutional leadership who help guide and sustain this work. So it is my privilege to invite our president, Dr. David Vásquez-Levy, to offer his reflections.
Thank you. First and foremost, our gratitude to Dr. EunHye So for a remarkable job bringing us all together, attending to a lot of detail to ensure that today was such an amazing success that created the space and the opportunity for participation, for the hard work of inviting in chapel and in other places for people to submit their thoughtful work, the selection process, and everything that has led to this day. So thank you very, very much for your leadership. It has been such a delightful day. I think about, with appreciation, a couple of references to the commitments we make to blow your mind, to embolden your heart, and to strengthen your hands, and to have that resonate so deeply today. I hope that you did find yourselves, and the conversations I certainly did, with the presentation of the work that's happening within our classroom that is inviting us to really expand our vision, to blow our minds, and to place the things we care deeply about into a larger whole, into that responsibility of epistemological, theological work that needs to be done in the academy, but also to be able to be emboldened by that activity that is academic so that it gets lived out in our communities. One of the major shifts we are making as an institution is to think of ourselves not only as a teaching institution, but in what we experience today to be part of a learning network. Those 60 DMin students doing projects, some of which we heard today, is the church learning with us in the world, or the society and the community. The work of our MDiv students pursuing this and other certificate programs, we got a chance to be emboldened and to identify the practices that support and encourage and allow us to draw from a deeper well. And then the skill set that we have seen, both developed, demonstrated, and brought in. The richness of our community is that we are in this shift from a teaching institution to a learning network, is recognizing the rich diversity that makes up our community. We are no longer simply a residential community on Holy Hill that people come to be fed and strengthened. Although we continue to do that work, we really are an incredibly diverse community in age, in experience, and background. And so it is critically important that a day like this allows us to understand how we are learning together and how we are doing our work. And finally, an important shift that we have also been seeking to pursue that is alive in this day is a sense that when we think about public theology, it is not shaped in a previous generation's understanding of that public theology. When the heads of an institution or its faculty would be the only ones speaking into the public, write an op-ed and have it published. We are living in a much more fragmented time, where the attention to the work of religious communities, of theological thinking, is much more limited in the public square. And so our efforts need to be very different from the assumption that we can speak and the world will hear. And instead, what we have practiced today, and I know is reflected in the projects that we heard about, it is not just theology, public theology, but it's theology in public. How do we engage and theologize on the moment, in the places, in healthcare, in advocacy, in the work of the church, and in our society in ways that are informed by theological reflection, and both the history and traditions of our communities, some of which needs to be excavated and recovered, but also by that long view that advances us towards the future of a more hopeful place, to create, as we have committed ourselves to do, to prepare spiritually rooted leaders to create a world where all can thrive. So thank you for the incredible contributions today for that work, to our faculty, to our students, and to a whole community. Thank you very much for this remarkable day.
Thank you, President David, for helping us situate today with the larger vision of our institution. And now I invite our Dean, Dr. Susan Abraham, whose leadership has made this symposium possible, to offer our closing remarks. Dean Abraham?
Thank you, thank you, thank you. This is a dream come true. I was thinking here of an adequate metaphor to describe the delight and just deep satisfaction that I feel. And I thought to say, if I were a cat, I would be purring. But I think I'm more like the Cheshire cat for a little bit, in the sense that I would just be grinning with happiness, though the Cheshire cat has other problems. I don't ascribe to those. But I think also what happened here, just to add one thing, to two things, this is an example of being leaven and salt in the world. This is so important because what we saw here today is the ability of the academy to actually bridge the divisions that we have between church and society, the other two publics. So our three publics of the academy, church, and society are so divided right now, and the academy is often called elitist and standing apart. And here we saw today the ability and the attempt to bring these together. Bravo. Thank you all so very much. And now, to probably the cherry on the cake, these culinary metaphors are very important in theology. It's critical. I want to celebrate the work of our faculty. I've been texting some of the faculty have been texting me throughout today, actually. And I just want to say, without the brilliance of minds like our faculty, who are able to actually, draw out, in the best sense of that word, draw out the best in our students, so that our students then become part of the constellation that we represent as people who are open to the intellectual and spiritual life. To this faculty, I want to say, I am deeply grateful. Yet we also want to celebrate your individual achievements. And for this, we had set up a mechanism whereby the community would identify your particular strengths and your particular powers. The nominations for this year's Faculty Award were outstanding, absolutely outstanding. And the qualitative responses that we got, it took me some time to read them and to digest them, because students wrote a lot. A full 62% of the votes and nominations cast were from students. This is outstanding, outstanding participation and outstanding commitment to celebrating the work of our faculty. Here were some of the comments about this year's awardee, and I've tried to blur, as much knowledge as possible until I announce the name. Please know that this year's award could have gone to at least 5 people. It was that close. It was very, very close. So we had to choose one, and I made an executive decision. It was a clear winner, but there was a lot of contention from the others as well. This is what the students had to say about this year's winner. A great instructor who cares about students, makes assignments clear, gives accurate due dates, and follows the syllabus. I thought only faculty told students to follow the syllabus. This is the opposite. Students like it when faculty follow the syllabus. Wow. All of this improves the student experience, said this particular comment. Another one. When I arrived at PSR, I had many doubts about whether this was a call I should answer. This professor has guided me through my journey in class, encouraging me to actively participate and engage. Their accomplishments as an educator in themselves are amazing. But beyond that, they embody a spirit of belovedness that deeply influences us as students. As theologian, educator, and public thinker, this professor demonstrates how rigorous academic research can be combined with pastoral care, community involvement, and institutional change in ways that greatly benefit students at PSR and the wider community. Another one, I'm honored to nominate this faculty member for the Faculty Excellence Award, not from direct observation of their classroom, but with the profound and transformative impact I have witnessed in a student whose life was changed through their teaching and advising. A close colleague of mine came to PSR carrying deep wounds from prior educational experiences. Yet in that person's time studying with and being advised by this faculty member, I have watched a remarkable transformation unfold. This student did not simply gain knowledge. This student reclaimed her voice. This professor has consistently guided my seminary journey with a wisdom beyond their years. Their role as advisor to me has been nothing less than aligned with the desires of the divine for my purpose in the world. I could go on. I could also say that many of these comments resonated and reflected comments that were said of other faculty. This is a world-class faculty, and I cannot tell you how proud I am of all of you. But today, I would particularly like to celebrate the one that we will offer this award to, and that is to Dr. Ish Ruiz. Congratulations, Dr. Ruiz.
Oh,
Like
wow. Thank you so much. That is, I am so honored and touched by all of these words. And wow, I am humbled and so, wow. Thank you so much. I sometimes I'm a little bit speechless. Thank you. I'm just so honored to be a part of this community. I was thinking the other day about like the 15-year-old me who wanted to dedicate his life to theological education and then immediately be terrified as to whether I would find a community um, where I don't know, where I could exercise this vocation. And the truth is, I've been a teacher for a long time, longer than I've been a professor. I've been an educator in the high school setting, and I've always learned more from my students than I could ever hope to teach them. So I want to thank all of you for welcoming me into this community. I want to thank you for being the community that you are, and just to say how profoundly honored I am to be a part of PSR. So, from the bottom of my heart, thank all of you for your kind words, which I am so touched by, and I look forward to continuing to be a part of this community and learning from all of you what it means to be unafraid. So, I am very overwhelmed. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I will share with the faculty the many qualitative comments I got about all of you. So that is something that everybody can feast on. But Ish, congratulations. You are home. You are home. You belong. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. What a wonderful day. And Dr. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dean Susan, and congratulations again to Dr. Ish. So happy for you. And thank you all for being part of the Unafraid Symposium 2026. It is the 5th year. I'm looking forward to next year. Thank you for all the great work that Dr. Lisa Asadilio has laid the groundwork, and it has been possible until now. And I know that Dr. Lisa was also here as well. Thank you, thank you. And whoever will be in charge next year, many blessings as well. We are grateful for your presence, your engagement, and the work we have shared today. We wish you all a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you, everyone.